One might suppose that a Vasylenko's analysis would be all about that bass intro. And you'll be
goddamn right.
The intro runs for just 1/5 of the song. It's gonna take up literally over a half of this video. But I'm sure you won't mind it. And you might have clicked specially for that bass. And you'll get that. This song is really epic and super iconic, but at the same time, it may seem there's little to talk about it outside that intro. But actually, in this song, there's way more than meets the ear. Hi friends, it's Andriy Vasylenko, and after a 3-year break, we are resuming our song breakdown series. And for this comeback, I gave you 2 really cool options: Fundamentals or Painkiller by Judas Priest. You voted for the former. A song that we should have done maybe in the very beginning of the series, considering all the bass and Metallica and Cliff Burton background and origins of this channel. And so what is coming is a pretty huge load of cool stuff I have accumulated over these years and gonna unload on you. So let's just go along this intro and see how soon we're gonna stumble upon and start talking about something. Here we go. Stop. So the intro's intro is a pair of a couple of pairs of F-sharp accents with some shuffle feel. These couple notes may seem insignificant to the whole idea, but if not for these very couple accents, the whole song might have not been born at all. And this is the part of Cliff Burton's riff, which is not actually his. So let's rewind 1 year prior to the release of this song. Joining Metallica, Cliff had lots of ideas. However, the debut album Metallica were about to record at that point was pretty much packed at that moment. But as a kind of welcome aboard greeting and a sign of appreciation of his talent, Lars and James managed to carve out a spot for Cliff for his solo, which is called Anesthesia, Pulling Teeth. And so on the next album, Ride the Lightning, just 1 year apart, Cliff became a co-author of 6 songs out of 8, including, you guessed it, Fundamentals. But there were problems along the way. Some of Cliff Burton's ideas were too weird for Metallica, so to speak. Those ideas were alright for the psychedelic, progressive, whatever he did in his previous bands, but now it's, well, metal. And in particular, they had issues with what would become Fundamentals' intro. They tried to make it work within the context of Metallica, but failed repeatedly. And then, as the story goes, James Hetfield went like, "How about this? Check it out." Plus another minor fix, we'll get to it later on, and all of a sudden, the puzzle came together. Now it does sound like Metallica. And that's a great example how one kick-ass riff could be a collaboration. Like the time Lars Ulrich improved Kirk Hammett's Enter Sandman riff. And Fundamentals is Cliff Burton plus James. But that symbiotic relationship between James and Cliff did not end there. That's pretty much what happened each time they had to adjust Cliff's bass ideas and make them into the guitar-oriented pieces of music, culminating on Orion probably. But let's move on into the intro. Remember, we just 1 second into it. Hold on! So, Cliff Burton started playing bass at the age of 13-14, after the death of his brother. And in 1979, at the age of 16-17, he formed his first band called Easy Street, which then transformed into Agents of Misfortune. Remember those psychedelic progressive thing I mentioned before? These are the ones. In 1981, Cliff and the boys of Agents of Misfortune played in a high school contest called Battle of the Bands, which some legendary person got on film and it is now available on YouTube. The quality is pretty bad, which is something you would expect from the 30-year-old videotape, but it is quality enough to see and hear what's happening there. And what is happening there is history in the making. 2 licks that will later turn into songs that would help shape metal and help breed a whole new generation of bass players. Anesthesia and Fundamentals. And you can recognize it. It It is certainly Fundamentals in its infancy, but something feels off there. It is off, literally. The chromatic part is off by 1/8 and shifted closer to the beginning. Well, may seem like not a big deal, but now the weak and strong bits are flipped, and that does affect the feel. And so when making Fundamentals the proper Metallica song, they just shifted it and it felt righter, more metal. And remember those F-sharp accents James came up with? They did not come out of nowhere. The original version of this melody also had some pre-hits, but they were evenly spaced. Alright, enough of the intro now, we'll return it a bit later. Let's talk about something else. And if you think about it, with a proper tone and some minor tweaks, Fundamentals could have easily fit the Black Album. Just to add a proper Kirk Hammett solo and throw a couple yaks somewhere in the beginning. And those early yaks would actually water down the track because the singing actually does not start almost halfway through the track, at the mark of 2 minutes and 6 seconds. Which makes Fundamentals the fourth Metallica track that gets to James opening his mouth the longest. And write in comments your guesses for the top 3. Instrumentals do not count. But it is the number 1 considering the ratio of that part to the entire length of the song, which is 41%. But again, Fundamentals does sound like an early precursor of the Black Album, arguably even more so than its neighbor in the track list. Fade to Black, Metallica's first ballad with acoustic guitar and stuff. I guess Fade to Black is a bit too complex and dark as to compare to Nothing Else Matters and Unforgiven, while Fundamentals is moderate enough to be at par with like Wherever I May Roam or Don't Tread on Me, and both of the songs actually have some similar traits to Beltals. Fundamentals is 4/4 and kicking the floor drums pretty much through all the way through. And maybe the band kind of recognized that too much simple is from Metallica, and they added that really crazy outro. It kind of derives from the intro accents, but the rest is just pure chaos with a random free meter. They just had to throw something like that in there. Alright, now we finally can play the intro uninterrupted till the end, right? At this very note, we already got a whole new story to tell. This one note is like a cherry on the pie of this riff. And everyone has been playing it wrong, including Jason Newsted and Robert Trujillo, which is even more weird with Robert because he seemed to have nailed that 19 to 60 pull-off. Something that most did not do, including Cliff. Even though it does appear like he did, because it makes sense positionally, like he plays around those frets, but listen carefully to the original studio recording and tell me if you can really hear that B note, that 16th fret. Well, you cannot be certain actually, because that particular bit is inconveniently covered by wah. Thankfully, we've got great footage of Cliff Burton doing this riff in extreme close-up. That must clarify it. It actually looks like he does some sort of pull-off from 19th fret, but to the open string and not to 16th fret, which is kinda counterintuitive to do in that position, so no wonder people did not get that. I suppose Cliff must have done that way to kinda switch positions more conveniently for him and to kinda switch gears within the riff. But in my opinion, that 19 to 16 pull-off makes this riff more complete and integral, especially if you play it without wah. And another common variation of this particular moment is the Newsted way, which is not doing pull-off whatsoever. Sounds cool, but that cherry is not there. But if you think that the way is a variating or messing up, depending on the outcome of whom the Beltos intro stopped there, you'd be drunk. And for that, we don't have to scroll through the thousands of YouTube covers of the songs. Actually, most of the dudes get it more or less right. Let's go to the richest source of Beltos butchering: the Metallica bass auditions of 2003. Just how, why, and what the f***? Even if to consider that the movie editors may have deliberately made the contestants look like fools and losers compared to Robert Trujillo, they really thought their originality would help them to stand out in the eyes of James Larson Kirk. Or they did it so wrong and were so oblivious to that. Frankly, I kinda dig those weird variations of the Beltos, especially the one by Eric Avery. It's like a couple octaves lower, has no distortion and barely cuts through the mix, like the bass version of Beltos or anti-Beltos. It's funny and ironic how one of the most legitimately simplest Metallica songs turned out to be the ultimate test for bass players. And by the way, there's an old video I made about the bass auditions when I talk about what is happening there. But Metallica had another bass audition in their history, the one that Jason Newsted had won, and as decisively as his successor Roberto. And funny that Full Metal Beltos 2 came up there at some point. But this time, it's no other than Les Claypool who tripped over it. He had a special invitation by his former classmate Kirk Hammett to attend the audition, and so he did show up, even though he did not really know Metallica, just to honor Kirk's kindness. And so when they started playing the song in question, Les was just stood there, and everyone was like, "Man, why aren't you playing?" And he was like, "Wait, is that intro bass? I thought this guitar?" Just for the record, that fact came from Les Claypool's autobiography. Check it out, that's a fun read. Also interesting that Cliff is not doing the chromatic lick, the descending motion, the way he kinda supposed to. One finger per fret. He's doing it with 3 fingers, like na na na, and then slides to the last one, na, no pinky involved. Some of you may recall, actually, that Cliff had an injured pinky which he tore when he was fishing as a kid and could not bend it properly ever since. And that's actually on the other hand, on the right hand, on the blocking one. And that's why it's sticking out oftentimes when he's playing. And so Cliff doing that descending chromatic lick the wrong way could be just a matter of habit. He just happened to had learned it that way and that stuck. And personally, I find the proper way, more convenient to play, despite having pretty small hands. And as for the bassist, for real, no, intro is not done yet, so let's have a little rest again. And by the way, who remembers the quite recent time when it was not common knowledge that Beltos' intro is bass and not guitar? That used to be kind of rare fact you might have not known about Metallica. And it kinda annoyed me. And that annoyance had fueled the beginnings of this channel as you know it, like almost 10 years ago. It's gonna turn 10 this February 10th, on the 62nd birthday of Cliff Burton, I guess. And the first video was my first Orion cover. Don't watch it, it's terrible. Rather watch my next attempts, especially the one with Symphony Orchestra with Ben Zimmerman. And yeah, maybe on that date, on the 10th anniversary of this channel, it'd be cool to make such a breakdown for Orion. Yeah, we haven't done it before. If all's fine, that's gonna happen. Man, rarely have I done it on this channel, but this is such a cool opportunity. That would be such a waste if I missed it. Click the bell to not miss the future videos. They are not really often here, so if I something release here, it's gonna be epic. as epic as this one, I hope. So yeah, make the goddamn bell tall. But again, about Pull Me the Bell tolls, it was so on the surface. Like, just watch a single Metallica live performance and see, that's not the guitar that's doing na-na-na-na, but a 4-string motherfucker. And later on, a 5-string motherfucker too, when Robert joined. And speaking of which, who also remembers this design that we used to have a couple of years ago? And some of you actually wrote me, yeah, you would buy it, but because of the profanity you cannot really, because your mom will see it, something like. So yeah, I've got good news for you. The design is back, and now it's a little upgraded to fit all the demographics. From now on, let's just complete the damn thing. And so now we are 33% done with the intro, because there's 2 more bass tracks there. In between the main one, the melody is kind of sandwiched. And neither of them is performed live for the obvious reason, for lacking of bassist on the stage. And so the second track is just the guitar accents ta-da-ta-da-ta, underline the most bassy part of the bass intro. And the third one is the least bassy. And that's the one that might have actually been responsible for all the decades-long confusion that that's guitar work, something that even Les Claypool fell for. So the main bass part we just analyzed is already pretty high up on the fretboard and already kind of crosses into guitar register. However, when you're listening to the studio mix, you kind of hear it even higher than it seems and is done live. Like if the guitar actually overdubbed it with some octaves. And that's what some tablatures show. But actually the guitar overdubbing it kind of makes sense, because bass's register is not wide enough to contain those notes. Except it does contain them, although in a concealed form of harmonics, overtones, flageolets, whatever you call them. So here's the mysterious part, isolated. And yeah, Cliff did use some harmonizers and octavers, but in this particular case, that's his finger's job. If you listen carefully, besides the actual notes, you can hear also some kind of clicks. That's because that technique in action is tapped harmonics. You saw Cliff doing them in, say, Anesthesia outro. And the trick is in tapping in the right way 7 frets up. And I completely forgot to film this part for you now, so let's the younger version of Andriy show it to you. Actually playing one incorrect note, you'll see comparing the tabs. And yeah, that's not the easiest bass technique, and you can easily miss some harmonics, especially on speed. And even Cliff, who perfected this technique, sometimes missed some harmonics. You can hear even one in the Anesthesia outro on the studio recording. And that's probably why Robert Trujillo, when he was playing Anesthesia fully for the first time since Cliff, he decided to go with more controlled pinch harmonics in that part. And you see that Cliff Burton really crafted this intro like a painting, like a sculpture, to make it really a piece of musical art. But even to forget about the extra stuff that people had no clue about and just take the middle part, that was enough to revolutionize bass. Well, it should have been a song analysis, and bass is not all of it, although it is most of it. So just to make up for that, let's elaborate a bit more on the guitars. So the chuggery. Yeah, Cliff wrote it too. It is present in its raw psychedelic form on the high school contest, but there it was higher with some extra movements and guitar harmonizing with bass. then it was metallized by moving down all the way to open E, cannot go lower. And my favorite composing nuance of the song is when the rhythm keeps playing those F-sharp accents, ta-ra-ta-ra-ta. But Cliff is already onto the next riff. That's overlap for a couple cycles and then merge into one of the most heavy and headbang-induced Metallica moments ever. Then the verse and chorus riffs are probably James's, as well as that kind of semi-harmony in the bridge, and maybe even Kirk's looping part. It sounds suspiciously similar to Black Sabbath. And it's James Hetfield who is known for sneaking Sabbatism into Metallica, and is open about it. And so I guess only one mystery remains about From the Beltos. Who dropped the F-bomb? Beltos! Fuck. So here's the deal. You see the selected area. That's the video I'm gonna release. And here's what is not gonna be in it. Firstly, some parts just did not fit into the flow of the video. Some really interesting facts about From the Beltos, but just too much. It's really like 20 minutes. You're probably bored as hell now. So I'll list those clips, like 2 or 3, on my second channel, Be In Metal, so subscribe to that one. And if you are still here, you're probably gonna love some extra backstage interesting stuff. So like a third of the footage I filmed for this video was messed up because of the lighting. The sun was going down, so in order to just keep going with other stuff that I have to do, I have to sacrifice those bits. And for those who are asking me, how are you? How are things in Ukraine? In short, I'm fine. That's all. If you see the news, you may guess that the war's still going, and right now it's freezing again, and that's what Russians waited for. They wanted to destroy our infrastructure, so that we freeze again this winter. They failed last time, they're gonna try it this time. The power may be out, so everything, but that's our life, and we'll keep doing our job. So don't be overwhelmed by that. But thank you for supporting Ukraine and me. Again, links in the description for the t-shirts, for donations is appreciated. But just thank you for staying here. See you next time, friends.